Support for this episode of I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere is made possible by the Wessex Press, the premier publisher of books about Sherlock Holmes and his world. Find them online at wessexpress.com. And the Baker Street Journal, the leading publication of Sherlockian scholarship since 1946. Subscriptions available at bakerstreetjournal.com.
I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere, episode 111. A Hip-Hop Holmes.
I hear of Sherlock everywhere since you became a chronicler.
In a world where it's always 1895, comes I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere, a podcast for devotees of Mr. Sherlock Holmes, the world's first unofficial consulting detective.
I've heard of you before. You're Holmes the meddler, Holmes the busybody, Holmes the Scotland Yard Jack in office.
The game's afoot as we discuss goings-on in the world of Sherlock Holmes enthusiasts, the Baker Street irregulars, and popular culture related to the great detective.
As we go to press, sensational developments have been reported.
So join your hosts, Scott Monty and Burt Wolder, as they talk about what's new in the world of Sherlock Holmes.
You couldn't have come at a better time!
Oh, what a grand time it is to join us here on I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere, the first podcast for Sherlock Holmes devotees where it's always 1895. I'm Scott Monty.
And I'm Burt Wolder.
And here we are closing out 2016. If you happen to download this before the stroke of midnight on December 31st. Otherwise, Happy New Year!
Happy New Year!
Does that work? Is this technically a New Year's show?
I guess so, yeah.
Are you making any resolutions for the new year? And any Sherlockian resolutions for the new year? Let's keep this on point.
Oh, I like that topic very much, Sherlockian resolutions. We should have asked folks. Well, we can still ask them to send us their resolutions. I think mine are, unfortunately, for the last couple of years, I've ended the year with a set of Sherlockian resolutions that are always the same that I have not fulfilled. And one of them is there are 3 or 4 articles that I really want to work on. They're all sketched out for the Baker Street Journal, but I have just never found they always go, my own hobbies, my own interests always drop to the bottom of the list. What about you? What are your Sherlockian resolutions?
Well, like you, I have a handful of articles that I'm working on the Baker Street Journal, although I think it's slightly different than what you mean. I'm trying to work my way through reading them. But that's part of a larger issue, which is getting behind on my reading. I do so much online reading of articles and current events and everything on the internet that I seem to have lapsed in the paper hardcover book reading, and I'm trying to get back to that. And frankly, I think part of it is simply keeping the mind fresh, even for professional purposes. You can find inspiration, you can find ideas, you can find yourself, obviously whisked away to another world, as a way of distracting yourself from the daily problems at hand, and find yourself coming back to work, coming back to the things that you need to focus on with a renewed sense of an approach, of vigor, of new ideas. So I'd like to commit myself to more real reading in 2017.
I like that a lot, and that's a very good observation. That just happened to me the other day. I try to keep up. I always have a stack of magazines, and I think we've talked before. I've got this pile of books, and I'm sure you have a pile of books that are waiting to be read. But the other day, I was reading an article in the New Yorker, which is one of the 2 or 3 magazines that I still keep up with regularly and subscribe to. And I read the opening lead on this particular story, and I stopped and said to myself, boy, that is clever. Of all the ways to start a story like this, to start with that little moment. And suddenly it occurred to me, wait a minute, I could use that same technique in this other thing that I've been struggling with. And something like that, just made me smile for an hour, that I had sorted that out just by looking at what somebody else had done and figured out how to apply the same kind of a technique.
Yeah, I think that's spot on. And it's not too similar from some of the scenes that you would see in the old, I'm calling it old now, Mad Men series, where the chief creative officer would leave the office in the middle of the day to go watch a movie, to go catch a matinee somewhere. And it's a trick that is not foreign to a number of creative types who will do that kind of thing in the middle of the workday simply to find inspiration. So you're in good company.
Yeah. Well, you have to get up and stretch and walk away from it for a while just to clear your head. I'll sit down and work for a couple hours, and there comes a point where the temptation is just to keep on grinding and going. But the best thing to do is to take a walk, have a cup of coffee, get away from it, even for 20 minutes.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, we hope you will not nap through the next 20 or 40 minutes as we bring you a little chat with our latest guest. And before we do get to her, we'll talk about her in just a moment. We do want to pause for this station identification.
Winter is a great time in the ancient Anglo-Saxon kingdom of Wessex. Our copy of De Temporum Ratione by the Venerable Bede says we are looking forward to Sol Manau, the mud month when the night is 14 hours long. You can celebrate those soothing hours with Unmitigated Bleat, selected writings on Sherlock Holmes by Paul D. Herbert. These classic essays, collected for the first time, are exactly what Sherlockian scholarship is all about: insight, knowledge, and humor. Available on January 7th in New York and online the next day at wessexpress.com. Friends, the snow will soon be reaching to the fence. To wrap it rail by rail till it is lost in fleeces, it flings a crystal veil. So put another log on the fire and reach for the pleasure only a volume from the Wessex Press can provide. Choose yours today.
We're back from the wilds of Wessex. I always feel like we should use a TARDIS for those little adventures.
We should do. I can't wait to find out what they do with their farming policies. They've done such wonderful stuff, bringing back the 6th century. It was high time.
Well, if anyone was going to do it, they would.
Yeah.
I can imagine. I know we mentioned Peter Vaughan in the last episode. He obviously passed away recently. And we mentioned him because he was James Turner in the Boscombe Valley Mystery in the Granada version. And a friend of mine wrote a note to me out of sheer amazement. He was familiar with Peter Vaughan's name, but it wasn't until he took stock of Vaughan's full career that he discovered this. He said Peter Vaughan, who managed the unthinkable feat of being a British actor for more than half a century without appearing on an episode of Doctor Who, has died at the age of 93. He said he was pretty much the only one who didn't make it into any one of those 857 episodes.
That's very clever. I like that.
It is. I never stopped to think about it, but, at a point. Well, anyway, we're not here to talk about Peter Vaughan or Doctor Who or the TARDIS. We are here to talk with Karen Wilson. Karen Wilson is a Sherlockian from the Maryland area, one who has a particular musical bent. She and I first became acquainted at a Scintillation of Scion 7 a few years ago, where I heard her perform, and Burt recently heard her perform a toast at the Ash Brunch. And we thought it was high time to bring some of the musical talents of Karen Wilson here to you, our faithful listener. So let's head over and talk to Karen. Karen, welcome to the show.
Hi, great to be here.
Karen who? Wait a minute.
Yeah.
How come I wasn't told?
Now, remind me if I'm off base on this, Karen, but I think the first time that you and I met was at Scintillation of Scion 7, about 2.5 years ago. Does that sound right?
It's possible. Were you wearing a rainbow shirt?
Wow. That I guess I need to retire that shirt. Yes.
No, that was a very memorable shirt, and I think you gave a talk at that one.
I did. That's the Brooks Brothers party shirt, as I understand it to be referenced in fashionable circles. But what I recall about you is that you and your son participated in the event. You both presented, and it was, as we're going to talk about music in the canon. And your son, if I recall, played the violin and actually played the theme from the Granada Sherlock Holmes story.
He did. We opened with the theme from Granada.
Now,
then it was a bit of a bait and switch. After that, it was all classical music.
Right. See, you had us in the palm of your hand, all the people that know Sherlock Holmes and popular culture, and then bait and switch, as you say. Oh, my goodness. So is that something that you typically do, co-present with your son, or was that kind of a one-off?
We had done that for Watson's Tin Box, and were asked to reprise it at the Scintillation. But no, we haven't done any other Sherlockian concerts. I've been in Sherlockian concerts with other people, but just those 2 times.
Mm. And you are musical by nature and by training? Is that?
I'm from a musical family. I've sung in choruses and been a church organist for many decades. And my son was a music major in college. So,
wow,
yes,
art in the blood.
I guess so.
Wow. So you probably hold in your heart with dear esteem, as much as I do, that scene from The Simpsons when Bart was handing out the fake hymnals and had the organist play
In the Garden of Eden by I, Ron Butterfly.
Yes, and they go on forever. That was a good one.
You haven't ever been in situations like that, have you?
Nothing like that, no.
Okay. So being a church organist, you're not really you don't have a lot of chance to improvise and to riff there. I mean, it's pretty much by the book, I would imagine.
It is, although there's a alternate harmony on the last verse tradition that organists sometimes indulge in. They're never improvised. They're meant to seem as if they are. But no, not a lot of room.
You crazy kids. So when did you start combining your love of music and your musical profession with that of Sherlock Holmes?
Well, not until I joined a Scion, which is relatively late in my Sherlockian career. I jumped on the bandwagon all the way back in 1974 or 5, whenever it was that the 7% solution was published. I'd love to say I discovered it in utero, but I think I was in 8th grade. But I didn't join a Sherlockian society until 4 or 5 years ago, and because you need an audience for something like that. I did parody songs in other settings. I was the person at the office Christmas party that did the parody version of The Night Before Christmas, lampooning all the people in the room. I was that person. So yes, it was natural then to put it all together when I was with other Sherlockians.
They're usually an appreciative audience in these kinds of situations.
They are. And at Watson's Tin Box, at our monthly meeting, a captive audience. There we are in the back room, and people are very polite, very appreciative.
They've barred the door to get out front. So yeah, a captive audience. Well, our own Burt Wolder has been known to strike up a tune or two in various Scion meetings. Well, and why don't you let us know how you came across Karen and why you had the positively amazing brainstorm to have her on the show.
Well, I was, as we talked in our last episode about Sherlockian societies, I was delighted to be at the annual Ash brunch where there were a number of toasts given, and Karen gave it's not really a toast, but it is the most remarkable Hamilton-inspired Sherlockian rap song, tribute to the master, that I have ever heard. And you, happy listeners, if I hear of Sherlock, we'll pause for a moment so you can take out your desk diaries and write down today's date and time, because you're going to want to celebrate it every year once you recall hearing this.
How does a young, eccentric son of a dull country squire, born in the middle of a forgotten shire, a third son, and not an heir prospective, somehow make his way to London and become a great detective, forensics, founding father, there was no other, though his big brother was maybe a bit smarter. Our boy worked a lot harder, a crime-fighting self-starter. Before long, he could out-deduce any Scotland Yarder. And every day while crimes were being planned and committed throughout the great cesspool, he knew his skills were fitted to follow the clues and against the bad guys be pitted. This brother was ready to see each villain outwitted. So he sharpened his skills, learned the properties of blood, ID'd a lot of ashes and many types of mud, wrote a monograph or 3 on the subjects he thought had worth. Otherwise he didn't care if the sun went around the earth, and his word got around. Some said this guy is insane, man, but Gregson and Lestrade decided to make him their main man. He found a cool apartment, but he couldn't pay the rent, so young Stamford introduced him to a friend. May I present Sherlock Holmes of Baker Street? My name is Sherlock Holmes of Baker Street, and though right now I can't quite make ends meet, just you wait, just you wait. What was the trauma scholars asked in their article so critical that stunted his emotions, made him cold and analytical? Some say his mother left, life domestic didn't suit her. I read that she took up with Sherlock's mathematics tutor. Went to university, we know he mentions college. Left early, we think, to try to find other knowledge. For his needs, the usual curriculum is flawed. You know, a guy can get expelled for flogging corpses in the quad? It would have been harder to get started on his new endeavor. Luckily, old college pals like Trevor and Reg Musgrave found him clever, gave him cases, spaces where he exercised his smarts, and on off days he'd be reading or else in the lab at Bart's, scanning for every case he could lend a hand on, planning for a future when his own 2 feet he'd stand on, and each new success validating that plan. 'Cause Sherlock always catches his man. 'Cause Sherlock always catches his man. 'Cause Sherlock usually catches his man. 'Cause Sherlock often catches his man. Games afoot, Sherlock Holmes of Baker Street. A client's waiting in your rooms for you, because you never back down, you always try to solve the crime. Oh, Sherlock Holmes of Baker Street. A grateful world sings to you. Did you know that you have such fame, that Sir Arthur would feel such shame, and countless fans would play the game? The train is in the station now, see if you can spot him. He may be in disguise, he may be traveling with Watson, and time has not destroyed his rep, for we have not forgot him. Some fought with him, one died by him, many trusted him. John, he loved him, and Doyle, that's the damn fool that tried to kill him. There's so many cases yet to solve, the game's afoot. What's that name then? Sherlock Holmes of Baker Street.
Holy cow. Wow.
Isn't that something?
That's amazing. That is just amazing. So if you're somehow separated from the earth, or have been for the last 6 months, that was based on Hamilton, right?
Yes, and for our listeners around the world who may not be familiar with this particular Broadway phenomenon, Karen, why don't you tell us a little bit about Hamilton and how you came and what your reaction was when you saw it?
Well, Hamilton, of course, is the creation of Lin-Manuel Miranda, who's won just about every prize except the Nobel Prize, I think, for it, where he reimagines the life of Alexander Hamilton and the other founding fathers connected to him, based on Ron Chernow's biography of Hamilton. But the show is cast with people of color, and it's composed as like a rap opera. So that was the most middle-aged white lady version of that of that style of music, a true desecration.
It's a tribute. I think it's a tribute.
But anyway, I had heard about Hamilton, of course. Well, I don't know about of course, because actually this is a rare case of Karen getting a teeny bit ahead of the zeitgeist. I heard about it in the summer of 2015, and I thought, that'd be fun to go see. And I looked, and they were selling tickets 6 months in advance. So I bought one just at the regular price to go see it when I was up for BSI weekend in January of 16, and that's when I saw it.
And you didn't tell me. Huh.
Sorry about that.
Yeah,
yes.
Me too.
I should have bought 2 tickets, one for a friend. They became impossible to get just maybe a month after I saw it.
So what did you think when you saw it?
Oh, I was amazed. I was stunned. And yes, for somebody who's mostly a classical music person, right? This is completely outside my area of experience or expertise. But no, I was blown away. It was great.
And did it occur to you right then and there that, boy, you could do this for Sherlock Holmes?
Well, I was caught up in the show while it was happening, but I think we were still during the standing ovation when I thought, I wonder if we can do anything Holmes related for this. And that opening number, the origin story, seemed like the way to go.
But it's so complex. The rhythms are so complex. I mean, how did you wrap your mind around that?
Wrap my mind around it. Now, actually, it's a little more forgiving. I mean, I've done Gilbert and Sullivan things where the rhythm is completely regular, but utterly unforgiving. You have to match syllable for syllable in order to make them doable. So here, because, you can just squish a couple words together, like, that makes me think of Tom Lehrer when he did the folk song Army, and he says, doesn't even matter how many syllables you try to squish in a line. Rap is very forgiving that way as long as you're rhythmic about it. So this more or less tracks the original rhythms of everything in Hamilton. And I did have the Hamilton lyrics in front of me as I was putting it together. There were a few lines that I just borrowed wholesale, but a little bit forgiving, which was good.
I'm interested in the creative process here. Having written a number of parody songs or musical toasts myself, and frankly and unabashedly being a Weird Al fan.
Ditto.
See, it can be really challenging to go back and forth and as you're working through their lyrics, try and look at yours, understand the tune in your head. What was your process for going through this? How did you pull all of these disparate ideas together?
Well, always when I start them, I need some kind of a hook or I can't proceed. It's usually the first line, but if there's some chorus, then it'll be that. But I knew I had to start, how does and then fill it in with things that applied to Sherlock Holmes. And I knew I wanted to end that first stanza there with make his way to London and become a great detective. So it was just a matter of filling in the blanks, right? In the Hamilton one, it's how does a bastard orphan son of a whore and a Scotsman, right? Well, I thought, so who's Holmes the son of? A dull country squire. And then what rhymes with squire? That took a long time. I experimented with spire, church and being in the countryside, but then shire. There it is. And then something to rhyme with detective. I was working with effective, and I get a rhyming dictionary out actually. And air perspective worked out. I had to make him the third son, so I had to borrow a little bit from the extra canonical musings of other people. And there were a few things like that in there. But and then because this is an origin story, there were tons of things that I didn't have to worry about including. That was nice, right? That the second stanza had something about Hamilton being the $10 founding father. So I thought, all right, what's Holmes the founding father of? Forensics, right? And so on.
You make it sound so simple. But the wonderful thing is what you just mentioned, which is your obviously broad knowledge of the canon and canonical scholarship and then commentary and even the reference to the mathematics tutor. And you were really able to put it all to use in there. That's one of the wonderful things about this. You get the whole scan of Holmes.
Well, thank you. Yes, I had to get a nod in there to the 7% solution, right? And taking up with Sherlock's mathematics tutor. And there are a couple others, but there's some things that work better in person, right? The 3 repetitions, Sherlock always catches his man. Sherlock usually catches his man. Sherlock often catches his man. That works better in person, where I'm kind of scratching my head as I remember more cases that didn't work out. But I'd say it took about 6 months to put it all together. I got home in January and I just worked on it on and off through the summer. The 2 big concerns were, one, I needed to wait long enough that Hamilton had kind of penetrated popular culture, because there's nothing worse than doing a song parody and nobody knowing the original thing it's based on. Back in January of 15, I did something at the Gaslight Gala in New York that was based on that Meghan Trainor song, All About That Bass. And it was about Dr. Watson. And I said, and he's all about that case. Well, I got a lot of compliments afterwards for that original rap song that I had written. People didn't know the original material. So, thought, got to wait till it's been on a few award shows. But then I didn't want to wait too long, because Hamilton parodies are all over the internet. There's the Star Wars one, Luke the son of Anakin. The Hamilton cast did one of Sweeney Todd, where the original cast made it the origin story of Sweeney Todd. And I thought, if I wait too long, someone's going to do a Sherlock Holmes one, and I've put a lot of effort here. So I found my moment.
That's good. That's incredible. Well, I always get strange raised eyebrows when I sing a parody of T for Texas, Blue Yodel number 1 from 1923. It's not in the cultural zeitgeist anymore.
So you mentioned, well, I don't know. I think in our email exchange we were talking a little bit about the great history of Sherlockian music, and this is in such a fine tradition of people like James Montgomery and so on. What have you had a chance in your Sherlockian engagements to look back at all those older songs and ballads?
A little bit, yes. I did a talk on Sherlockian filk, basically fan-created songs for the Tin Box a couple of years ago, and we did a little sing-along, including the irregular song, the one that Montgomery wrote to Believe Me, if all those endearing young charms. Mm-hmm. Yes. And
that's actually a great song. I prefer that song to Aunt Clara, for events, but it's hardly ever heard these days.
And most people know the tune from Roadrunner cartoons. So, that's an unexploited opportunity. But yes, we did that one. Believe me, if all those endearing old yarns is the opening line.
Yeah. And we'll still have those boxes well guarded by cocks.
Watson, and the great couplet.
Yeah. Watson data as yet unrevealed. Yeah.
That great couplet at the end, to the boy who adoring is now half a man and the man who is yet half a boy. Sung by a room full of probably 2/3 young women, but still, when we did it. And there's an Isaac Asimov one that we did, that the text, if you asked me to guess, I would have thought came from the 50s, but apparently he debuted it in 1984. That's to a Londonderry air, Oh Sherlock Holmes, etc. He's got one. Who else? Well, we did a few. There's this fellow named Harvey Officer that you probably heard of, the leading light musical person in back in the day, in the Baker Street Irregulars, and he did a parody, not a parody, it was a tribute song to On the Road to Mandalay. Now there's a song that's fallen out of the culture.
Where the flying fishes play.
Right, only it was on the road to Baker Street. And it was written during the war, and it, alluded to England standing strong against the Nazis and all that being the tradition of Holmes. I had somebody do that at the Tin Box. So yes, that's become an interest.
We need an album. When are you going to put out an album of all of these things?
Seriously.
Yeah.
Well, Harvey Officer also wrote a violin suite called the Baker Street Suite that I've just gotten a copy of that music, and I'm going to have my violinist son look at it. So we'll see if there's anything doable.
Really? Oh, I didn't know that. In fact, I know almost nothing about Harvey Officer other than the songs and the works that we just mentioned. But if he wrote a violin suite, he must have been a substantive musician.
I think he was a music teacher. I looked him up back, and I'm not remembering all the information, but I think he was a music teacher career. And he may even have made a recording of some of his Sherlockian stuff, possibly the violin suite.
Really?
Yeah, I think that's the case. The BSI carried it at one point in the late 40s, early 50s, I believe. And Edgar Smith actually, I think he edited a volume of Harvey Officers for BSI Publications.
Yeah, I remember that book. But so do you think there was a record of it done back in the 40s?
I think there may have been.
Because I have those BSI records that were put out. Those are from the 60s, though. They didn't go back that far.
Those are the Bill Raby collection. Yeah. Of course, John Raby, good supporter of the show. His father was Wilmer T. Raby, Colonel Warburton's Madness in the BSI. He had those recordings, but I need to check with our sources. Maybe before we go to press, I'll see if I can come up with the answer on that.
Yeah. You know, this parenthetically, this whole area of music in the Baker Street Irregulars is and Sherlock Holmes is really interesting. I mean, Henry Boot over the years has uncovered a lot of songs that were contemporary to Holmes, that featured Holmes, you know, that came from the teens and in the 20s. And in fact, somewhere I have a CD that Henry put out, and I think some of that music is on there. But there was a fellow in the 1930s, not a fellow, he was a professor and a noted ethicist who had quite a career at Harvard and then finished his career at Stanford, named Philip Rhinelander. And over the years, some of us have gotten wind of some plays that Rhinelander did centered on the unrecorded cases of Sherlock Holmes, Wilson the Canary Trainer, and so on. And I always thought these were minor efforts. It turns out there were 5 of them, that they were performed from the mid-30s until the early 1940s, and that they were musicals.
Wow.
Musicals with terrific, and only one of his poems, only one of his lyrics has survived. It was published in a book. And I've been hunting and trying to find descendants of Rhinelander to see if there are any extant copies of those works, because they all sound absolutely fascinating. And when you look at his one lyric, you know, it's really a terrific lyric. But it's amazing what creativity this has sparked over the years.
Yeah, pretty much any outlet that people have, they will sick on Sherlock Holmes. You know, and we would be remiss not to note that the Bill Raby recordings, Voices from Baker Street,
yes, indeed,
is in fact available as a 2-disc CD set from our sponsors, the Wessex Press.
How convenient.
And it features James Montgomery singing, I think, both of the songs that we mentioned.
Well, what are some of your other favorite performances or parodies that you've done, Karen, that particularly stand out, either because of the creative process, maybe a favorite tune of yours, or maybe because of the amazing reaction that you got from the audience in attendance?
The Gilbert and Sullivan ones go over really well. And the first one of those that I did was a Watson song. He is the very model of the British Army medico. He'll treat your wounded shoulder, leg, pneumonia, gout, or headache, etc. And one of the things I loved about that was I had a whole verse, because this is probably my worst failing, is I can't stop with one verse once I get in the zone. And I had a whole verse devoted to actors who'd portrayed Dr. Watson, for better or for worse. In writing him for stage and screen, adapters have played fast and loose. Few characters can be portrayed by Lucy Liu and Nigel Bruce. Right. And Freeman, Kingsley, Salas, Law, McNee, Burke, Hardwick, Alan Cox, Mills, Blakely, Stock, Morell, Reggio, and Bob Duvall and Bernard Fox, etc. That was fun to do.
Oh, well done.
I'll say.
I love that.
Wow.
Boy, we should they really should be put together a Sherlockian farrago, an evening of songs. What a great idea.
I would love that. And we should get Henry Boot on the show too to talk about this, because I had mentioned this to Henry at one point. What if we could do kind of my preference is Sinatra. So what if we could do, I said, a kind of a lounge evening of Sherlockian songs, and even create a narrative out of it. Not quite a musical, but so I think there's a lot there from a variety of perspectives to be able to pull together an evening of musical, not theater, but musical entertainment.
Yeah,
at the very least.
Yeah.
I have an Irene Adler song to The Lady is a Tramp, only it's The Lady's Not a Tramp.
Oh, I think I've heard that. I think I've heard that somewhere.
I sang at the Cornish Horrors years ago. I sang a toast to Brenda Tregennis to that tune.
Oh, that's right. That's right. You did. Well, and then every year for many years at the Sons of the Copper Beeches, I've done a singing toast to Violet Hunter. I think the first one of which was to the tune of The Girl in a Gilded Cage. She's only a bird in a gilded cage.
Uh-huh.
And then there have been, I don't know, half a dozen of those over the years. But what a lot of fun. So are you a fan? I mean, you must be a fan, obviously. You're knowledgeable about music. You know Gilbert and Sullivan, and we mentioned Tom Lehrer already. Do you know Michael Flanders and Donald Swann?
Oh, I love Flanders and Swann.
Ah, good. Yeah. And I'm a big fan of Tom Lehrer and song parodies, and particularly Flanders and Swann, because they were so original and clever.
Yes, they parodied the styles mostly.
Yeah.
In fact, I saw Donald Swann. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. You saw Donald Swann?
I saw Donald Swann. It was in 1986, I think, or 85. I was a part of a group. I did a 2-year course at Oxford, and while I was there, I was part of a group, and he was invited in to give a talk, and so I got to hear him perform.
Oh, how wonderful. Well, he was quite a musicologist. I mean, his connection with Flanders, Flanders was the one with the outgoing personality. And I recall hearing him years ago on Fresh Air with Terry Gross. I mean, he was quite a serious musicologist, Swann, and composer.
So what was the setting? Was it a classroom? Was it a theater, an auditorium?
It was actually a small room. I was part of a society that was interested in the writings of Tolkien and C.S. Lewis and so on. And Donald Swann had written settings of poems of Tolkien, a song cycle. And he had also written an opera based on one of C.S. Lewis's stories. I don't know if it ever got to the publication stage, but based on one of his space stories, Paralandra. And he played excerpts from both of those, and I think he sang. He might have also had a singer with him, somebody with a real serious voice. But yes, that was a lot of fun, and it was in an intimate setting, so we really felt like up close and personal.
That's impressive.
Oh, what a great experience! Yeah, I know he passed away a few years ago, Swann.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had a similar experience with Anna Russell.
Yes.
Wow.
She came to. I think her papers were being donated to the Special Collections Department at Boston University. And she came and addressed the Friends of the Libraries. And, I was, I don't know, all of 22, 23 at the time. I really didn't have any appreciation for this. But afterwards, I went and I researched her. And, there you go, Karen. Her classic, How to Write Your Own Gilbert and Sullivan opera. Is amazing, and her 20-minute version of Wagner's Ring Cycle.
Yeah.
That's enough to train anybody to take on the bigger pieces. So, just there's a lot of fun there, a lot of fun you can have, and as you both have said, having a wider knowledge of the world around you, not just the subject matter that you're trying to parody, but how it connects to other things. I think this is where you draw people in rather than alienate them when you create such a piece.
So Karen, what are your other interests? We were talking before the show began that you are an educator and you're looking forward to the holiday beginning and finals ending. So what's the rest of your life like?
My day job is philosophy teacher. I teach introduction to philosophy, ethics, logic at a couple of undergraduate institutions in the Baltimore area.
And so what is the experience like of teaching that particular subject to today's younger generation?
Well, I hate to be a cliche and say it's so different from when I was in school, but, a lot of people, or at least I'm guilty, when you aspire to be a teacher, I guess you imagine teaching yourself. You try to be the teacher you would have wanted to have. And, of course, most students are not kids who are going to grow up to be teachers. They're not fascinated by the subject matter. That's not the teacher they want, the one I wanted to be, teaching my young, enthusiastic self. So it's been a battle. It's more like missionary work. Everybody goes to college. They go because it is supposed to increase your chances of getting a job that pays well. So there are these very vocational interests, and philosophy is a requirement to be gotten out of the way. And I had a colleague very wisely say to me, well, then maybe you should make your goal, not to teach them everything there is to teach, or just make your goal that at the end of your course, they consider that taking another philosophy course wouldn't be the worst idea in the world, that they'd at least consider taking another philosophy course. So that's been good advice. And again, it's a little bit like missionary work.
Has your professional engagement in philosophy and so on leached over to your Sherlockian enthusiasms? Have you sort of looked into semiotics and Charles Peirce and abductive reasoning and all of this stuff?
Not so much. When I first started, again, I'm pretty new to the world of science and so on. And when I first got in, of course, Andy Solberg, who was a philosophy major in college, and sometimes says that one of the big values of his degree is that it enabled him to write papers about Sherlock Holmes and philosophy. Anyway, he gave me the impression, or maybe I was just so impressed by him, that a lot of this territory was already plowed. And so I thought, well, sort of go the music route, and that's what I've been doing. But lately I've been thinking about how Socratic Sherlock Holmes is, and wondering if there's a talk in that. There's probably one that's been given by a million people, but I wonder if there's a talk by me in that.
Oh, I bet there is. Well, my friend Al Silverstein, is a psychology professor for years in Rhode Island, and he's done some papers and some work about Aristotle and Holmes. But I didn't know Andy was a psychology major in college.
Or philosophy, yeah.
A philosophy major? That's fascinating.
Yeah, his signature on the hounds of the internet for many, many years used to be cogitat ergo est. He thinks, therefore he is.
Or he thinks because he's Vernhard est. So there you are.
Oh, very good.
So what's next? Are you coming to? Are you coming north from Balmer for the weekend festivities?
I will definitely be there. I'm all signed up. I've even been asked to do something at the Gaslight Gala, but we're kind of being a little looser about the plans this year, so I don't yet know what it'll be.
Oh, now Nick Martorelli told me that the gala this year is going to be at Annie Moore's. Is that right?
That's right.
Yeah. I understand it's been moving around because something happened to the Manhattan Club. I don't remember what, but yeah. That should be fun.
I think it's nice to mix it up.
Yeah.
And do different things.
Yeah, but you don't have a 6-month lead time to get your material together this way, though.
I do not, so it's not going to be Hamilton. Well, there are things that have been written more the proverbial night before as well. So, and on the back of the envelope and such. So I'm ready.
Well, why don't you see what you can do with Uptown Funk?
Or do 2 Uptown Funk.
So who are some, other than the folks we've already talked about, Gilbert and Sullivan and Tom Lehrer and so on, who are your favorites? You said you're basically a classical music enthusiast, as Scott and I are. What's some of your favorite artists, some of your favorite music, some of your favorite things?
Well, I am an opera fan.
Oh.
I'm part of that half of the world, right? There's 2 kinds of people. And And, so I love Bryn Terfel. I love baritones and baritone arias, and I love Bryn Terfel. So that's a lot of my playlist is just him doing various arias. Big fan of Verdi, although my favorite opera is Don Giovanni. Opera. English music, obviously, that's sort of first half of the 20th century, that lovely period of English music. You had Elgar on the turn of the century, and then as you get into the century, Vaughan Williams, and then Britain, and So,
all excellent, excellent choices. Yeah. One of my favorites is the snow begins to swirl outside the window here. Not something you see quite as frequently down in Maryland, but as the Arctic blast comes down from Canada, I pull out Vaughan Williams' Antarctic Symphony, which of course began as the soundtrack to the 1948 film Scott of the Antarctic. And then he later just expanded it into a full symphony, and just the wind machine and the kind of the wordless chorus that they have there. I mean, it's just literally and figuratively chilling.
It's great stuff. I love the Sea Symphony, his first one.
Ooh, that's a good one too. Yeah. Good. Now, has anyone, to your knowledge, ever created any kind of symphony or even chamber music related to Sherlock Holmes?
I know that there is, besides the Harvey Officer suite mentioned. There was
that ballet, of which I have a recording somewhere. Remember that? That was from the late 60s or early 70s. The Great Detective or something like that. There was a ballet.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And there's a chamber music suite that, I own the music to this. I mean, the CD. That's contemporary. Oh, who was the composer? Corey was his first name. I'll remember after we hang up, of course. There is some Sherlockian music. I mean, of course, there's soundtrack music as well to the wonderful films. And my favorite Sherlockian, non-Sherlockian piece is the Miklos Rosa Violin Concerto, which is adapted from, or he adapted into, golly, I can't remember, the soundtrack to the Private Life of Sherlock Holmes.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, that's an excellent one.
I love that. I also very fond of the music from 7% Solution. That great adventure theme at the end where they're fighting on top of the train. That's a very engaging score.
Yeah.
And then the naughty Sondheim song that is mostly excised.
Yeah, I don't care much. I mean, it's not a really very good song, but
no, it was actually performed live for us last year at the Baker Street Irregular Center.
Beautifully. Much better performed by Sue Dollinger than it was in the original film. Yeah.
Oh, that was something. That's one of those things where you had to be there.
Yeah.
But she had the ostrich feather fan and
Well, more to the point, she had a great voice. I didn't know that Susan was such a great singer.
She's an opera singer as well. Yeah. I don't know that we have any tenors or baritone opera singers in the Sherlockian ranks, but we certainly have altos and sopranos.
Yeah. I think we need a new scion about Holmes and music. I think the three of us should sign up.
Is there
sign me up, yes.
Yeah, is there one like that anywhere? Do you know?
That I've heard of, no.
Unfortunately, the name The Sounds of the Baskervilles is already taken.
We can come up with something creative. Hey, folks, if you're interested in joining a sign like this, if you have some kind of musical talent and musical interest, and it intersects with Sherlock Holmes, drop us a note and let us know. This might be something for us to plan to in the future.
Yeah, I mean, we've got Henry Boot, and who's also very talented. Well, I know she's talented. I mean, she's been an actor. She's a best-selling author. But I found out at the ASH meeting, because I was lucky enough to sit next to her, that Lindsay just has a fabulous voice. Absolutely fabulous. I didn't know she could sing. Lindsay Fay.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Well, Karen, it has been an absolute pleasure and delight speaking with you and listening to you sing.
Oh, thank you.
We look forward to seeing you in New York in January. That is, if you're not tiptoeing around Broadway, escape the clutches and getting your inspiration for your next canonical toast or song. But if folks want to connect with you online, is there any place that they can do that?
Wow. I'm such a creature of the last century.
That's okay.
Well, it's okay. People can send telegrams. That's all right.
I am on Facebook, and it's Karen Wilson, but there are probably a million of those. I think mine is Karen Wilson 61. No use pretending that isn't the year of my birth. And
you certainly don't look 61, Karen. You really held up very well for your age.
Thank you. So I'm Philosophy Mom online too. So if you see a Philosophy Mom somewhere, it's probably me.
Excellent. Two very good handles to have, Philosophy and Mom.
Here.
So
if you're going to be a successful mom, you have to be philosophical.
Yes.
Well, Karen, thanks so much for taking the time. What a treat to talk to you.
Thanks for having me. It was great.
Wasn't that fun?
Wow. What a delight.
Sherlock Holmes of Baker Street.
Yeah.
What a talent. What a talent.
I know.
Isn't it just great? You know, if I hadn't gone to the event and had the luck of her agreeing to give this, I never would have known, that it's just amazing, isn't it? The people that for example, I've known Andy for such a long time. I didn't know he was a philosophy major in college.
Yeah.
It's amazing the things you learn about people.
I agree.
Yeah.
We got to keep hanging around these folks.
Oh, all right. Okay. Friends, are you annoyed by the sight of children staring at their smartphones and tablets? Want to help them understand British history? That's why you need the new Sherlock Holmes brand Little Londoner Victorian playset. Our new Workhouse edition gives the kids a long day of unraveling rope, breaking stones, making sacks, and driving the corn mill. It's the only playset that delivers the 3 C's. Clamorous, consumptive, chores. Help the kiddies appreciate the great job you do as parents with the Little Londoner Victorian playset. Available at your local Sherlock Holmes brand dealer today. May cause lacerations, contusions, or abrasions. Not recommended for children under 2.
The end of the year typically brings about the opportunity to reflect and take stock of the year gone by. 2016 is no different, and to many people, it's been a difficult year. Politics, celebrity deaths, and general malaise seem to pepper every conversation. As you take stock of the Sherlockian year, have you subscribed to the Baker Street Journal? If you haven't, you've missed out on a variety of topics that are sure to get your cerebral blood flowing. Topics like casting Holmes, the talk that Jeffrey Hatcher gave at the annual BSI Distinguished Speaker Lecture. Arthur Conan Doyle and Baseball by Mark Alberstadt. Isn't It Romantic? A further exploration of That Little Thing of Chopin's by Alexander Katz and Catherine Carlson. And of course, the 2016 Baker Street Journal Christmas Annual, First Encounters with Gillette's Silent Sherlock Holmes. It's too late to get all of these goodies now, but it's not too late to make a resolution to subscribe to the Baker Street Journal for 2017. Make sure you head over to bakerstreetjournal.com and place your subscription today.
Well, I can't believe that this is the final show of 2016. We did pretty well this year, I will say.
Yes, over the last, it's amazing to think of how long we've been doing this now, but because it doesn't seem like that amount of time to me, but we have done very, very well in keeping to our schedule, even when one of us wasn't available and the other was. So good for us.
It was close a few times, I'll tell you that. Very close. And I think we managed this year. Let's see. We started out in, I think it was with show 88, if I'm not mistaken, with the Abominable show. Was that where we started 2016? Let me take a look at the archives here. Show 88 on January 15th was the Abominable show, where we recapped The Abominable Bride. And as luck would have it, once again, at the beginning of 2017, we'll be treated to another BBC Sherlock series 4 coming out, beginning with the Six Thatchers as the first episode, followed by The Lying Detective, and then concluding with The Final Problem. So by the time the next episode of I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere comes out, Sherlock will have wrapped up on PBS and on the BBC. So I'm sure we'll have an opportunity to talk about that in the future.
Yeah, and you're going to be continuing the custom of live tweeting during the premiere of the first episode.
Yes, that was, not completely a surprise, since I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere has been responsible for live tweeting during the U.S. premiere, at least, of Sherlock since season 1. They came back to us and asked us to do season 4 now. So, this is the 5th time we've done it, since we also live tweeted during The Abominable Bride. So I've got a secret weapon up my sleeve in the guise of Tim Greer. So if Tim is listening and wants to tell everyone how he does it, we'll certainly be open to that. But should be an interesting series. Obviously, 6 Thatchers designed on the 6 Napoleons, and The Lying Detective is very closely aligned to The Dying Detective. It looks like Toby Jones is going to be playing Culverton Smith, so there'll be a nice thread of evil going through that episode. So we'll be looking forward to that. So we'll see.
Very good.
So stay tuned. We're working on some big guests to have back on the show or on the show in 2017. If there are people whom you think would make excellent interview guests, please get in touch with us. Send us an email at comment@ihearofsherlock.com. Obviously, you can reach out and touch us via the phone by dialing 774-221-READ. That's 774-221-7323. You can reach us on all of the socials, where we are I Hear of Sherlock at whatever convention there is for each of those. And what am I missing?
Impossible. There can't be any. Well, Snapchat and things like that, but you just said iHose, I Hear of Sherlock. So.
Yeah. Oh, leave a comment on the webpage. The web address for this episode is ihose.co/ihose111. And I suppose if you throw something in the back of a Model T Courier, it should reach us eventually, assuming that the driver doesn't have to come via an overseas route. And we'll do it like that.
Yeah, and leave us a review on iTunes. Please leave us a review on iTunes.
We would love that. Even if it's a not so hot review. We don't want to tempt fate. Well, until then, I am Scott Monty, wishing you all of the pleasantries of 2017.
And I'm Burt Walder, wishing you the compliments of the season and a great year.
I love that.
The game's afoot. I'm afraid that in the pleasure of this conversation, I'm neglecting business of importance, which awaits me elsewhere.
Thank you for listening. Please be sure to join us again for the next episode of I Hear of Sherlock Everywhere, the first podcast dedicated to Sherlock Holmes.
Goodbye, and good luck, and believe me to be, my dear fellow, Very sincerely yours, Sherlock Holmes.